Zionists believe that they will rule the world, and the Christians basically are going to hand it to them because they believe that this has to happen before Yeshua can return. So they exalt themselves in fulfillment of the vision. What vision? The vision of rebuilding the Jewish temple. They take ancient prophecies that say that this house will be a house of prayer for all nations in which they will rule. The Zionists will rule in this new world system that's going to be built. We've been looking at this war that's coming in the Middle East, and it's developing. It's been taking a long time, actually, 4,000 years approximately, since Abraham had a son called Ishmael and another son called Isaac, and then another son, great-great-great-grandson, named Yeshua. And so these great men were coming together here at this time in Earth's history, and there's going to be a conflict, and we've been looking at that conflict. And this is where it's all going to start. The time of the end is all going to start in the Middle East. And so we're looking at that right now. So before we open the Word, let's have a word of prayer. Father in heaven, we thank you again for your word that is sure and tells us the events that are going to happen just prior to your coming, so that we can not only be prepared ourselves, but we can help others, and we can take this gospel of the kingdom to the world. We ask that you be with us now today as we open your word. Speak to our hearts, Father. We pray this in Yeshua's name. Amen. All right, so we've been looking at this wars and rumors of wars. We were talking about Yeshua when he was asked, what is the sign of your coming, in Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21. What is the sign of your coming in the end of the age? He started the whole end time events with war. Deception, of course, was the first thing he mentioned, but the first event, world event, was wars and rumors of wars. And we know that he's not talking about any old war, because we've had wars for, ever since history began, really. And so the war and the rumors of war really are centralized in the Middle East. Even China and Russia are getting involved in trying to dictate to the world what the world should do about this situation that we have brewing in the Middle East right now that involves Persia, Iran, which is anciently called Persia. So Persia then encompassed the whole Middle Eastern nations, from Libya all the way through Turkey, Afghanistan, across Saudi Arabia, the northern part of Saudi Arabia, and Iran and Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan. All that area was considered the land of Persia when the Persians conquered that whole area. And so we were looking at that last week a little bit, so we're going to continue on that vein, try and open this up to see what's not only going to happen in the short term, but we're going to go a little further into the prophecies and see what's going to happen. We've been saying a long time that there's going to be a temple in Jerusalem. Many have argued that point, but the prophecy seems pretty clear that that's where this is all headed. So we want to look at that and try and flesh that out just a little bit. So wars and rumors of wars, showdown in the Middle East. So we're picking it up in Daniel. We're going to look at, we saw the first few verses, and we're going to pick it up from there and see how this develops. I saw the ram pushing westward, northward, and southward, so that no beast might stand before him. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, and he did according to his will and became great. Now this is the ram. There's two beasts in this, as we're going to see. There's a goat and there's a ram, and they square off. And it seems to square off in the Middle East by the river Ulai. We looked at that location. That's in southwestern Iran. So that's one of the focal points of this vision. And it says that the ram was pushing westward, northward, and southward. In these directions, we want to look at this because it's not just saying this is really important here. So if we're saying that the ram is Islam, that's pretty much the whole area, the central part of the on your map there. Most of northern Africa is Muslim nations, and of course the Middle East. And then we go down into Indonesia, a lot of Muslims in the Philippines as well in that area. So they're spread all over, and of course the last probably 10, possibly even more than that. They've been sort of infiltrating into Europe for many years now. But the last 10 years, they've really pushed west. So we can see this prophecy is fulfilling itself here. So they're pushing west. That's the direction they're pushing. And west would be considered, if you're looking at the kings of Media and Persia, west would also be into Europe, which is what they've been doing. And when we look at Muslims as a whole, they have been pushing north as well. And also into Russia. I understand there's approximately 2 million Muslims that live in Moscow, and a lot of Muslims in Russia as well. And also China has had its share of challenges with the Muslims, not nearly as much as the West, and I think there's some good reason for that. But also Australia, they've been pushing down into Australia. So we can see how these prophecies are working themselves to the position where this ram is becoming very great, and it's doing according to its will. It just seems like they're spreading all over the world. And as we spoke about last week, their mandate is to rule the world. So they're spreading out all over the world, infiltrating even the governments of the West and in Europe. The UK is not exempt from this. Many Muslims in the UK. And they are not adopting our ideology, our values. They pretty much stick to themselves and create their own communities, if you will. And they have no desire to change. And obviously, as in any religion, there will be people that are on the left, so to speak, in that religion. And they will mingle, and they may become more Americanized or Europeanized, and they may change. But the core group, their ideology is to rule the world. And this is why they're maneuvering into all these places. At some point in the future, and we're looking for that point, not happy that it's going to happen, but it's in the prophecies, and they're going to make their move on the world. And so this is where we're going. So they will make their move and go out from their central point. Daniel 8:5 tells us, suddenly a male goat came from the west across the surface of the whole earth. Without touching the ground, the goat had a notable horn between its eyes. Now, the historicist view of this prophecy, most Christian religions believe that this was Alexander the Great and against the Persians in around the 300s BC. But the prophecy itself, we looked at last week, tells us at least 3 times, it indicated quite clearly that this prophecy is for the time of the end. So we're looking at these ancient civilizations coming together. And of course, Greece was the birthplace for Western civilization. And so because it says Greece, but it actually doesn't say Greece in the original, it says Javan, and that could very well mean Western nations in the time of the end. And it's interesting that it says suddenly a male goat, as if it is a surprise. Why is it a surprise? I believe mainly because this ram has done something very radical. Not sure what that's going to be, whether that's going to be some kind of attack on Israel, which would bring the West across the surface of the whole earth, led by the United States. It could also be some kind of nuclear exchange. It could also be terrorism spread worldwide. It could be a sudden attack against the West and against these other nations. There's a few different ways that this would happen, but the main thing here is the West has had enough, and we can see this quite easily as we're watching the world today. If Iran or any other Middle Eastern nation did anything radical, either to Israel or even in the West would put an end to this, and led by President Donald Trump. He is not going to take this much longer. We don't know where this thing with Iran is, but other Muslim nations are saying that they need to support Iran. I don't think we're there yet where this war is going to happen. We need some other things to happen as first, and we want to see what those things are. So the goat has a notable horn between its eyes. In prophecy, we see that the horns represent kingdoms that lead the bigger entity, and the bigger entity in this case would be the goat. So the goat has a multitude of nations. We're going to see that, how that develops, but it's led by a notable horn. This notable horn has to be the United States. They would lead the charge against Islam. Why is that? For the main reason that the West is basically Christendom, and this is really nothing less than a modern Crusades, a modern version of the Crusades. Islam is going to make their move on the West, and the West is going to say enough is enough. The problem with the West is there's so many sympathizers with the Muslim nations, and it's all over what's going on in Jerusalem with the people of Gaza, and many people are against Israel, and that's why there's no real effort to put this thing to an end, and there's a lot of opposition to what's going on. So it's developing. The situation's getting worse and worse and worse. It's not going in the right direction, and that's why this war will be fought down the road. So we see here that the notable horn would be the eagle. We saw in Daniel chapter 7 that there was a lion with eagle's wings, and we saw that the eagle's wings were plucked off the lion, and we're saying that that represents the United States. So in Daniel chapter 8, we have a notable horn, and we're going to see that this notable horn after this war is broken. So we see a coming together of the nations. It's kind of a new world system. It's the birth of this new world system that's coming to fruition, and the United States will lead the way. It will be a conservative, Christian-based group of nations. They will be the ones that lead this, and they will lead the charge against Islam. And the notable horn we're going to see is broken, just like the eagle from Daniel chapter 7 with the eagle's wings that are plucked off. So we're trying to join all these dots together so we can get a fuller picture of what's going on. So what we're suggesting is the goat is the UN, and it is also the first beast of Revelation 13. So we can connect Revelation 13, which is an amalgamation. What we saw there was a seven-headed dragon, and we saw it had the mouth of a lion, the feet of a bear, and the body of a leopard. That's a new world system that comes together. Now in Revelation 13, there is no eagle's wings. There's no mention of an eagle at all. So the eagle has been separated from this system. And we're going to see that. That's exactly what we're going to see in the goat. The eagle leads the way, the notable horn leads the way, but once the war happens, after the war, the goat becomes great. We're going to see that. The goat becomes great. When it becomes great, the large horn is broken. So it's cut out of the UN, and the four other kingdoms, the large kingdoms, which we're going to see here, are going to take charge, and they're going to lead the way without the United States. And this is exactly what we see. We're going to see that in Revelation 13. It explains it further, but it doesn't give us any reason why the eagle's been cut out. And we're going to put that all together here and see how that happens. So we see the 5 permanent members here. The United States, the eagle, Great Britain as the lion, Russia as the bear, China as the leopard, and France would represent the EU in the United Nations. And these are all the 5 permanent members. They are the victors in the Second World War. They set up a system where they would lead, and they would always be on the Security Council. They're the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. They basically rule the world. There's no disputing that. Japan isn't happy about that. Germany's not happy about that. Other nations aren't happy that these are the ones that are leading the world. And this is what the Muslim nations do not appreciate. They think that they should have a lead role in this, but they don't. And so when push comes to shove, and these nations realize that Islam is going to make their move on the world to try and dominate the world, bring in Sharia law, this is when these nations will come together, and this is when this war is going to happen. So we're watching the developments in the news. We're seeing how this is all coming together. And as the Muslim nations come together and work more as a unit all together, that's when we can know that this is really happening. We talked about the arms buildup in the Middle East last week. And the question that I have, are they building up their arms for the reason for this war? Because they do know that at some point their plan is to rule the world. And are all these arms going to be used? I think so. Okay, so the United States and the eagle would be this notable horn. So we're seeing a repeat and enlarge in Daniel chapter 8. So once the notable horn is broken, we are left with 4, and that just happens to be the way the prophecy goes. So let's keep going here. The goat had a notable horn between its eyes, representing the United States. In Daniel chapter 11, verse 3, then a mighty king shall arise, who shall rule with great dominion, the UN, and do according to his will. So this mighty king that arises, we believe that this is Donald Trump that it's talking about, and he will rule with great dominion. He will rule, he will dictate to the world what they're going to do. And part of that will be leading the charge against Islam. And of course, in Daniel chapter 7, represented as the eagle. I want to look at a few recent developments. Trump insists nuclear deal won't let Tehran enrich uranium, hints the U.S. could strike Iran. That's what we're looking at today. Other Muslim nations are saying, no, you can't, you shouldn't do this. They're not saying that as a united whole, and primarily Saudi Arabia and some of the other nations are kind of against Iran. They don't want Iran to be destroyed, but they don't want them to have a nuclear weapon as well. He goes on to say they won't be enriching. If they enrich, we're going to have to do it another way. And this is, he's hinting at a military strike against Iran's nuclear sites if a deal does not pan out. So he doesn't want to have a major war against Iran. They recognize that this could easily spread further. And so that's where really not sure whether this will spread further. If they go in, if they strike a deal with Iran, then Iran will be able to maintain their status, albeit they will have to give up their nuclear program as far as nuclear weapons is concerned, but they will survive. So we're looking at the possibility that if there's a war, it could unite the Arab world, and we know where that could go. We're hoping that doesn't happen yet. It's going to happen down the road, but we're hoping it doesn't happen yet. And we may escape this if Donald Trump has his way. The whole thing will settle down. He's got no interest. But if they do something major against Israel, they will jump in. And we're just not sure where that will go in the immediate future. Daniel 11, verse 2 tells us, "And now I tell you the truth, 3 more kings will arise in Persia, a 4th shall be far richer than them all. By his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all," that'd be Islam, the ram, "against the realm of Greece," or Javan, Western nations. And of course, where do we get that, the Greece being Western nations? If we go back to Genesis chapter 10, we can see that Javan was a grandson of Noah, and his descendants went west across Europe. And of course, we are descendants of Javan. So in the time of the end, which the vision is talking about, it's talking about the descendants of Javan. It's not talking about Alexander the Great. In the time of the end, obviously, it can't be Alexander the Great. It's the descendants of Javan who inhabited Europe and the West. They will lead the charge against the Muslim nations in the time of the end. So what happens next? Then he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing beside the river, and ran at him with furious power. Here again, in order for the West to run at Islam with furious power, it looks like they've done something radical. And like I say, there's two major possibilities. They've done something to Israel, although the world won't probably unite just because they've done something to Israel. It's more likely that Islam now has in place all over the world and is ready to make its move on world dominance. And that's more likely the scenario that we're looking at. It could be involving Israel, which I believe it will involve Israel, but it will more likely involve a move on the whole world system, because their mandate is to rule the world and make Sharia law the law of the whole world. And that's when the West and the other nations will say that's enough. Daniel 8, verse 7, "And I saw him come close to the ram. He was moved with choler against him." Here again, he's very angry. "And he smote the ram, Islam, and broke his 2 horns. And his 2 horns are the kings of Media and Persia." And they are the ones that basically dominate the ram, that control the ram. And the ram is Islam as a whole. So the 2 horns are broken, and it says it smote the ram. So Islam, many people believe that Islam will supply the world with an antichrist, but this is not what the prophecy says. So why aren't people seeing this? Well, they're not seeing this because they're reading the wrong prophecies. This prophecy has been relegated to the books of history in Alexander the Great. And so most of Christendom believes that this prophecy has been, for the most part, fulfilled. However, the prophecy itself says quite the opposite. It's for the time of the end. This is why we're looking at this. So the ram being Islam, breaking both horns, Islam is going to be completely out of the picture. So what religion would dominate the world if Islam was taken out of the picture? Christianity. Christianity would be the main religion that would dominate the world. And Christianity basically is made up of almost three sects. So there would be Protestantism, which for the most part took over the West, although Catholicism is very much alive in Europe, and Catholicism has now spread to the rest of the world. We're seeing many people, many high-profile people converting to Catholicism. So the West is made up of basically Protestants and Catholics. Also in Russia, we have Eastern Orthodox, and of course that's what we have in the Eastern churches. It's more of an Orthodox Christianity. So we have three groups that will unite. They will unite the world under these three groups of Christianity, and we're going to see how that's going to happen. So without Islam as a world religion, what do you suppose might happen if Islam was taken out? Well, we don't have to imagine too much. We can see what the prophecies are saying. It goes on to say, and there was no power in the ram, or Islam, to stand before him, but he cast the ram to the ground, Islam to the ground, and stamped on him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand, out of the goat's hands. So we can see here, Islam is going to be crushed as a religion. Why does it have to be crushed as a religion? Because the West is not going to submit to Sharia law in any way. They won't do it. And the only way that they can get rid of this ideology is to completely crush it. Islam will not rise up again to be a dominant religion. So let's look at something that's going on here. I asked the question, what do you suppose would happen if Islam was crushed? A CNN guest has claimed that House Speaker Johnson and Senator Ted Cruz support Israel because they are rapture preppers. Now don't miss this. This is very, very interesting. This is why there's this support for Israel. They believe that Israel has to build the third temple. The only way that they can build a third temple is if Islam is completely defeated. Because if they took a couple of cats up there and leveled the Dome of the Rock, that would bring in a third world war. So in order to build this temple, this long desired temple for the Jewish people, there's going to have to be basically an annihilation of the Muslim religion. And we can see in the prophecy that's exactly what's going to happen. So once Islam is defeated, this ideology that Israel has to have a temple, that the Christians will support the idea of Israel having a temple, because they believe, the Christians and the Jews believe, that this will usher in the long-awaited for millennium. If they can build a temple for when Yeshua returns, then he will take part in those temple services. And anyone that follows any of these religions at all knows that in Christendom, the John Hagees of the world are very adamant supporters of Israel. They want this third temple built. This is why they're supporting it. The Messianic group of believers, Christian believers that have accepted Yeshua as the Messiah, they also support Israel in building this temple. Why are they supporting that? Because they believe that they're going to get to go and offer sacrifices at this temple. And Christians, for the most part, are supporting Israel as well, conservative Christianity. However, Catholics aren't in support of this as much. And this is a very interesting concept. So it goes on to say, appearing on the news night on Wednesday, that would be June 18th, 2025, just a few days ago, podcast Jennifer Welch claimed, you have this whole sect of MAGA that supports Israel because they want the Jews to be in Israel so that Jesus can come back for the rapture. This is all part of their concept of the end times scenarios. And so they're working towards this end. They want to support Israel. They believe that anyone that supports Israel will be blessed by God. The problem is they don't understand who Israel is. We have a teaching on who is the Israel of God today, and it is those who have accepted Yeshua and all that Yeshua has given. We talked a little bit about that last week. Yeshua gave us a mandate as followers of Yeshua to go into all the world, teaching all nations to observe all that he has commanded us. And we recognize that it was Yeshua that gave the law on Mount Sinai. So he was really pointing us back to the law that he gave to ancient Israel. So today we have to follow that law. We're obliged to follow that law. And when we recognize how good it is, we want to follow that law. And so that those who make up Israel are followers of Yeshua that have accepted his laws of the kingdom. And so our mandate is to take those laws to the world and show the glory of those laws. We can see in Deuteronomy, it tells us that when we share those laws with the world, they will see the wisdom that is in those laws. And Christianity wants the Jews to build their temple, and they believe that will not only usher in the rapture, the time of the rapture, but it will also usher in the long-awaited for millennium. This is what they believe, and this is what they are up to. It goes on to say many prominent Republican politicians are evangelicals and believe the second coming of Christ is directly tied to the existence of the state of Israel. And I will add to the rebuilding of the third temple. And of course, that means World War III has to happen first. And that's what's going to happen after Islam is destroyed. Also on Wednesday, Senator Ted Cruz told presenter Tucker Carlson during a YouTube interview that he supports Israel wholeheartedly, and he's not alone, because of a passage in the Bible that tells Christians that those who bless Israel will be blessed. And here again, they have this idea that there are two groups of God's people. One is those people over in the state of Israel. They believe those to be God's people, and they call them Israel. And then there's the Christians over here. So there's two groups of God's people. God has always wanted to bring all of his people under one household, and he was going to do that through Yeshua. But those in Israel, albeit some of them are accepting Yeshua as the Messiah, for the most part, that's not who we're dealing with here. We are dealing with those who have rejected Yeshua as the Messiah. And the Christians still believe that they are God's people, although the New Testament is very clear. Those that have accepted Yeshua are considered Israel. We see that in the book of Galatians, where it tells us that those that have accepted Christ are of the seed of Abraham. And so those are the true Israel of God. Tells us in Daniel chapter 8 as we go forward in the prophecy, therefore the male goat grew very great, but when he became strong, the large horn was broken, and in place of it 4 notable ones came up toward the 4 winds of heaven. Now when we read these verses in prophecy, we don't see exactly how long the events that are portrayed, how long it takes for them to play out. So we've seen a war in the Middle East. We've seen after the war that the male goat, so that's a uniting of the world under a new world system that is led by the United States. We don't know how long that happens for, although I believe it's going to be a fairly short period of time. How long will it be? Well, I believe it'll be long enough for Israel to rebuild their temple. And I understand they even have the plans for that temple just waiting to be approved. But they're not going to be approved, apparently, until they can build their temple. And that will take the removal of the Dome of the Rock, which will be happening after this war. So all of this has to happen in order for them to rebuild their temple. The United States will be first and foremost, I believe, in giving everything that they need to get that temple done. It will be a kind of a modern day Cyrus when he allowed the Jews to go back to their homeland and rebuild the temple. We're going to see basically a repeat with that. And Donald Trump is very much a staunch supporter of Israel. His daughter has converted to Orthodox Judaism, and he has many connections with the Jewish faith. So we can see how this thing could develop very rapidly. After the war, after the defeat of Islam, they will provide the means and everything they need to get this temple rebuilt. And I believe that's going to happen fairly quickly. But after that happens, the large horn will be broken, and it will leave a scar. If we can just imagine this for a minute, that the United States has taken the world through this war, they become victors, and the whole New World Order goes through without Islam. That's the greatest threat to the world today. With that out of the way, this Christian sort of coalition of nations will move forward, and the United States will be broken. So the superpower that has led the charge against Islam will be broken. Just imagine what that would do to the world system at that point. That's when everything's going to come apart, but it will remain as a whole. Revelation chapter 13 tells us a little more about that. It says in Revelation 13, verse 3, I saw one of its heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed. What was this going on? This is that beast that has 7 heads, the mouth of a lion, the body of a leopard, and the feet of a bear. These are these other 4 horns that come up once the eagle is taken out. There's no eagle on this. What happened? That was the deadly wound. I propose that in Revelation 13, the deadly wound that this beast had was the United States being broken off. But we're told that the deadly wound is healed. So it moves forward without the notable horn, without the eagle's wings, and the deadly wound is healed. This thing comes together, it stays together. How does it do this? Goes on to say, and they worship the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worship the beast, saying, who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him? Now it tells us later on in this chapter of Revelation that the beast was wounded by the sword and yet lived. So it was war that was a wounding of this beast. And we saw this, we had to go back to Daniel to see what war it was that this beast was wounded. So it came together as a unit to defeat Islam, but the large horn, or the eagle's wings, were broken off. That's the deadly wound that this beast received. It's the United States. Let's go back to Daniel chapter 8, verse 22. As for the broken horn and the 4 that stood up in its place, 4 kingdoms shall arise out of that nation, out of the UN nations, but not with its power, the notable horn's power. So they're not as strong as the United States. 4 that come up in its place. What 4 horns, what do these represent? Well, it tells us that they're kingdoms. Now, if we go back to Daniel chapter 7, which we've done already, we see 4 major kingdoms. The first kingdom is a combination of an eagle and a lion. The eagle's wings are plucked off. So we have a lion, a bear, a leopard, and a dreadful beast. And those were those 4 nations that come out after the large horn is broken. So none of these nations have the same power as the United States. But the goat moves forward without the United States. That's the breaking of the large horn. That's the Revelation 13, that the beast, this goat, received a deadly wound. That deadly wound was the United States of America. We see this again in Daniel chapter 11, verse 4. And when he has arisen, his kingdom shall be broken up and divided toward the four winds of heaven. So here again, this is right at the beginning of Daniel chapter 7. We saw that there's four beasts come up from the four winds, so we're connecting these dots here. It says, but not among his posterity. So this large horn that's broken in Daniel chapter 8 is mentioned again in Daniel chapter 11, where it is broken and divided not among its posterity. So not the United States basically is taken out of the picture, and nor according to the dominion which it's ruled. So the United States is not going to continue as a dominant force in the world. The New World System that it basically was first and foremost that it created, it will be cut out of that system, and the rest of the world will go forward without the United States of America. I believe that the United States of America will have to fend for itself after this. With everything that's gone on in the United States, the terror that's happened on its own land will take the United States down. All the nations of the world will be picking up pieces in their own land. They won't be able to support the United States. And we here in North America will have to fend for ourselves. We will be reduced to a third world nation, and things are going to change radically for those in North America and the rest of the world as well. So the UN will go forward without the United States, and they will form a new world system without us. I want to look at a few videos that I picked up off of the internet to kind of support some of these ideas.
Levites, known as the Kohanim, are the descendants of Aaron. They are tasked with temple service, and they are now actively preparing for their roles in the third temple. When you go around Jerusalem at the appropriate time, you will discover Levites fully dressed in their Levitical clothes, getting ready to practice temple service. Dressed in specially remade white cotton garments with intricate sashes, these Levite priests are now honing their skills through study, practice, and rituals. For them, the third temple is not something of imagination or hope. It is their future that they are preparing to serve in. The Levites are prepared. They are training. They are getting ready. The prophetic clock is ticking faster than before. Never in 2,000 years has so much come together in preparation for the resumption of temple service in Jerusalem.
We don't have to use our imagination. Those that want to deny what is going on in the world and say, I know many people, oh, the temple will never be rebuilt. There are too many powers that are going to make this happen. We can't fight that. We have to look at the evidence that's before us. Let's keep having a look here.
Shapiro recently visited the Temple Mount, the location where the Jewish people expect the third temple to be rebuilt, the location to where, as if the third temple is rebuilt, the abomination of desolation spoken of in the book of Daniel and by Jesus in Matthew 24 will take place. This push of the Jewish people to be more involved at the Temple Mount site, as well as it's just the desire of the Jewish people spends honoring the people there, and how their efforts to get the Jewish people more involved at the Temple Mount has been going on and succeeding. And then at the end he mentions that it's the Jewish people's right to own that site because they originally had possession of it.
So we can see here what's going on. There's this desire for world peace. There's enough Christians and Jews that are out there that are recognizing that unless we have this temple, then the Messiah can't come back. And so they're pushing forward on this. Now, in Daniel chapter 11, we see an insight here that I struggled with this for many years. But then I saw something in here. It's actually telling us something very interesting. Daniel 11, and this is a little while after talking in these prophecies of the temple being rebuilt. Now in those times many shall rise up against the king of the south. Also violent men of your people shall exalt themselves in fulfillment of the vision, but they shall fall. So there's a few things that we can look at here. Not a lot of detail, but one thing we know for sure, these are violent men of Daniel's people. That would be of the house of Judah. So those people are involved in that area in Jerusalem. So we're talking about something that's going to happen in the latter times, that the Jewish people are going to rise up and exalt themselves. How are they going to exalt themselves? We just saw on the videos. These people are exalting themselves, saying that this house shall be a house of prayer for all nations. Well, what does it mean to exalt themselves? They're going to be the ones that are in charge. So they believe that they will rule the world. The Zionists believe that they will rule the world. And the Christians basically are going to hand it to them because they believe that this has to happen before Yeshua can return. So they exalt themselves in fulfillment of the vision. What vision? The vision of rebuilding the Jewish temple. They take ancient prophecies that say that this house will be a house of prayer for all nations in which they will rule. The Zionists will rule in this new world system that's going to be built. Are the Christians going to ultimately go along with this? No, they won't. The prophecy is very clear on why they won't. They will have enough of this, and they will eventually take over the temple in Jerusalem. But it's going to be built. It's going to be dominated by Zionists. They will start the sacrificial system again. Everything is being prepared for that time that is coming. So they're looking at these ancient prophecies. The problem is they're reading prophecies of when Israel was in captivity, and they're prophecies that say the captives will return and rebuild the old waste places. And they're applying those ancient prophecies that were for ancient Israel going back after their captivity and coming to the time of the Messiah. So they're lifting those prophecies and putting them down into our day when those prophecies were to have fulfillment back at the first coming of Yeshua. So you see, they're misapplying the prophecies. This is what everyone has always done, is misapply the prophecies. And somebody might say, well, how do you know you're applying them properly? Well, we're watching what we're saying be fulfilled almost on a daily basis today. And you ultimately have to be the judge of that. So we see here that the Jews are going to exalt themselves to fulfill the vision. They will rebuild their temple. And this is what we're seeing happen today. We go on in Daniel chapter 9. The 70 weeks are determined for your people and for your holy city, to finish transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. You see, everlasting righteousness has not come in yet. We're still waiting for that. And so we're trying to, not me per se, but many people are trying to make this fulfilled at the rebuilding of the temple. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth the command to restore and to build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times. Goes on to say, then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering, and on the wing of abominations shall be one who makes desolate, even until the consummation which is determined is poured out on the desolate. Now this whole prophecy was to be fulfilled at the first coming of the Messiah. But many today are taking parts of it, some all of it, and saying that, oh no, this has to be fulfilled in the time of the end. This has got to do with rebuilding the temple again. and the Antichrist interrupting the service, taking away the daily sacrifice. And this is how this prophecy is being applied. Whether you're a Jew saying that, oh no, this was all fulfilled in the past, has nothing to do with Yeshua, where modern Christianity, for the most part, is taking this and wanting to apply a lot of it into the future, and being the 7 last years, whether they believe this is the time of the Great Tribulation and the rapture is going to happen first. All of this is spoken of by modern Christendom in different ways. A lot of confusion on it, for sure. So here again, they're taking these ancient prophecies, Isaiah 56, verse 7. Even them I will bring to my holy mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices will be accepted on my altar, for my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations. Here again, Christendom, a lot of Christendom is taking this prophecy and saying, look, the Jews have to build their temple. They have to have sacrifices again. And it's all recorded in the prophecies. And my house of prayer shall be called a house of prayer for all nations. This is what people are saying about these prophecies. They're putting an end time application on them, and they're justifying everything that's going on through what has been written. Mark, Yeshua tells us, then he taught, saying to them, is it not written, my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you, the Jewish nation, has made it a den of thieves. So Yeshua himself was applying this prophecy back in his time. Christians today are going to apply this in the future. They're saying in the future that Israel has to recreate the system that ancient Israel had, the system that Yeshua basically brought to an end, even told that the kingdom of God would be taken from the new Jewish nation and given to a nation that will produce the fruit. He was very clear that that system came to an end, but so many are reading these prophecies, these ancient prophecies that were given for ancient Israel, and they're putting a modern day twist on them and applying them where they should not be applied. So let's look at what people are saying about this again.
We'll be equal and we're going to live happy, in peace.
The temple is going to be the greatest building in the world. It's going to be a place that will bring good to all nations. Read the Bible, it's written there. I mean, you don't have to ask me, come on.
Nobody's going to be jealous with each other. Nobody's going to be poor or stuff like that.
Nice sometime in the future, maybe in messianic times when everyone can pray together. We're all praying to the same God.
We all have the same God eventually. We all believe in the same God.
All the people in the world will understand that there is one God.
So we can see here when this third temple is built, the Zionists, those in Israel, will start their sacrificial system again. They believe that this will bring peace to the whole world. Now, the prophecy continues here and says that once the division of the 4 horns, these 4 kingdoms, this is when the temple has been rebuilt. It says, out of one of them comes a little horn. So out of one of these 4 kingdoms comes a little horn, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land. Now you can see in the slide there, I've got a little rectangle there. This is what's called the 1040 window. This is the largest population in the world. It's concentrated in the 1040 window. This area basically is not Christian. Now, if we can just apply what the prophecies say, if Islam is taken out as a nation, we see a little horn that gains control. That little horn is going to, it says, go south, and then it's going to go east, and then once it's conquered that area, conquered it with an evangelical thrust, if you will, then it will end up, it says, in the glorious land, which is Jerusalem. So with a dominant Christian religion encompassing the rest of the world, Christendom will make their push for world domination. They will, what they think, they will dominate the world, and they will rule from Jerusalem, which is the city of the great king. That's quite reasonable. So where will this happen from? We believe that this little horn power will be the papacy. So Catholicism will make their move on the world. Catholicism will make their world. Catholicism means universal church. They believe that they should rule the world as Christ's representative here on earth. Once they encompass the Middle East, once they dominate the Middle East and Northern Africa, which are primarily Muslim, and then you get into China, then the world will become basically Christian, albeit apostate Christian. They won't be keeping the Torah. They will have their own set of laws, and we read about that in Revelation 13 as that beast continues, that first beast of Revelation 13, which is a uniting of all of these nations. That would be the lion, that would be the UK, the European Union, Russia, and China. Once they unite and this little horn power takes control, that's the harlot that we spoke about last week. That's the harlot that gains control, and it says it controls the whole world. We see that again in Daniel chapter 7. Once the harlot gains control of the whole world, that's when persecution will begin in this part of the world. We want to remember that the United States is cut out of this part of the world. They are not part of this system that's in Europe and Asia. They will unite on that landmass first, and then it will spread to North America, which we're going to see here as we move forward in these prophecies. A second beast comes up. That would be the United States of America and the North American continent. Once they come on board, then it will be a one world order. At this point here, we have a new world order coming to fruition that will be led by the papacy. That's this little horn that basically goes on an evangelistic crusade down in the south. Then it goes east. Once these areas have united and come under the headship of the Roman Catholic Church, then they will make their move on Jerusalem. He even exalts himself as high as the Prince of the Host, and by him the daily sacrifices were taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Now this is very interesting. So this tells us that this little horn power, it goes to the place of God's sanctuary. The place, it's giving us a geographical fix. So we were just told that it ends up in the glorious land, which is Israel, and then it goes to the place of where God's sanctuary was, or where they rebuild a sanctuary, and they're saying at this time that this is God's house. So ultimately the papacy will end up in Jerusalem, where there is a temple operating, offering sacrifices. And what does it say? It says the place of his sanctuary is cast down. Because of transgression, an army was given over to the horn to oppose the daily sacrifice. So the system of Judaism that is ongoing at that time, it will be cast down, and they will take control of Jerusalem, and they will cause the sanctuary system that has been instituted by Judaism, and they will bring an end to that system. That's what the prophecy says. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to the certain one who was speaking, "How long will be the vision concerning the daily sacrifices and the transgression and desolation, the giving both the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot?" And he said to me, for 2,300 days, evening and morning, then the sanctuary will be cleansed. So we can see here that the papal power will bring an end to this system. How long will it be? For 2,300 days. Then the sanctuary will be cleansed. This 2,300 day period, it's actually in the translation, it says evenings and mornings. Many people have looked at the concept of, because it's sanctuary language and sanctuary time, we're talking about the evening and the morning sanctuary service. Why are we talking in those terms? Because we recognize that in the prophecy, this prophecy of Daniel 8, there is a rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem, and the little horn power, the papal power, moves to Jerusalem and stops the system of Judaism, primarily the morning and the evening sacrifice. Why would they do that? For the simple reason that Christendom believes that Yeshua is a fulfillment of that sanctuary system. When the Catholic system gains control of Jerusalem, they will bring an end to that system. They will institute their system of worship, their times and laws, and then that will spread to the rest of the world. That's when the Catholic Church, if you will deem itself as the vicar of Christ, the long-awaited dominance in the world that they have been waiting for, and they will cause persecution in every land. It will spread out from every land from Jerusalem.
It's the same New Age belief, really, that all roads lead to God no matter what you do. If you're Hindu, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, we're all praying to the same God. We're all going to be welcomed in, so we can all go to Israel and worship at the third temple, and God will hear our prayers and there will be peace. When in fact that's not the case at all. What will actually be is that will be the message that's put forth, but then anyone who says that Jesus is the only way to get to heaven, they will ultimately be beheaded in the end time.
Okay, so why do I bring this out? This is very interesting. This is where many people are taking a side road, I believe to be a side road. They're looking at this concept, and the Noahide laws come into this as well. They believe that the Zionists will rule. There will be a group of laws for the Jews and a group of laws for the Christians. The papal power is going to bring an end to this Zionist rule. That's what's going to happen. So Christianity is going to wake up to the idea that the Zionists want to take world dominance, and everything that they say will be law. But Christianity, in the form of Catholicism, once they make their move on Jerusalem, they will bring that system to an end. So while Christendom will recognize that they're not going to be led by the Zionists, and the temple services are not the way to go, the Catholicism will bring that system to an end, and then they will, as it were, win the war. They will dominate the world at that time. But the problem is that Catholicism is going to do all the things that they portray that others would do, and they're going to save the world from all this confusion, and they will rule the world. The Christians believe that they will be persecuted. That's what this video portrayed. The Christians believe that they will be persecuted, but the Christians ultimately will be the ones that are persecuting. The persecuted will then become the persecuting power, and they will dominate the world, and then they will prepare for the ushering in of the Messiah, but ultimately it will be the false Messiah. It will be the counterfeit Messiah. You see, all of this confusion, and that's what it is, all of the confusion that the world is moving towards is for the ushering in of the false Messiah. Whether it's a Christian religion, whether it's an Islamic religion, whether it's any other religion. The whole purpose is Satan is maneuvering to get into the position where he can dominate the world. The whole world at this time that we're talking about, when Catholicism is ruling, the whole Christian world at that point will be waiting for the return of the Messiah. And that's when the counterfeit Messiah will make his debut on the stage, and he will take control. He will take control from Catholicism. Goes on in Daniel chapter 8, verse 22 and 23. As for the broken horn and the four that stood up in its place, 4 kingdoms shall arise out of that nation, but not with its power. And in the latter time of their kingdoms, so the time that we're talking about, when these 4 kingdoms, in the latter time of their kingdom, we're getting close to the end now, in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their fullness, a king, that would be the little horn, shall arise. That's the papal power, having fierce features, who understands sinister schemes. Moving on, his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. He shall destroy fearfully and shall prosper and thrive, and he shall destroy the mighty and also the holy people. So this is in the latter time of these 4 kingdoms. That would be the UK, that would be Russia, China, and the European Union. In the latter time of their kingdom, when their transgression has reached the fullness, God allows this power to come in and take control of the world at that point, and that's when the persecution will be full on. Through his cunning he shall cause deceit to prosper under his rule. He shall exalt himself in his heart. He shall destroy many in their prosperity. He shall even rise against the prince of princes, but his kingdom shall be broken without human hands. And the vision of the evenings and mornings, going back to the vision of the evenings and mornings, which was told as true, therefore seal up the vision, for it refers to many days in the future. I'm proposing that the many days in the future have arrived. We're watching this thing build as we speak. Move forward in Daniel chapter 11, we see this same power, connecting some dots between these prophecies now in verse 22 and 23. With the force of a flood, they shall be swept away from before him and be broken, and also the prince of the covenant, connecting with what we saw in Daniel 8. After a league is made with him, he shall act deceitfully. This is exactly what we saw in Daniel 8. He shall come up and become strong with a small number of people. Verse 24, Daniel 11, he shall enter peaceably even into richest places of the province. He shall do what his fathers have not done, nor his forefathers. He shall disperse among them the plunder, spoil, and riches, and he shall devise his plans against the strongholds, but only for a time. At the appointed time he shall return, go toward the south, but it shall not be like the former or the latter. For ships from Cyprus shall come against him, therefore he shall be grieved and return in rage against the holy covenant. Here comes the persecution now, and do rage. He shall return and show regard for those who forsake the holy covenant. And forces shall be mustered by him. They shall defile the sanctuary fortress, and they shall take away the daily sacrifices and place there the abomination of desolation. So this is where we're looking at here. More detail on what the papacy is going to do. Go south, go east. Once it's in control of the whole world, then it will make its move on Jerusalem. And the sanctuary that the Jews have long awaited for, that will be in full operation. He again here tells us in Daniel chapter 11 that he shall take away the daily sacrifice. He will bring an end to that system, set up his own system, show regard for those that forsake the holy covenant, and that's when the great persecution will ultimately begin. Those who do wickedly against the covenant he shall corrupt with flattery, but the people who know their God shall be strong and carry out great exploits. It's interesting that the Sabbath, we can connect the Sabbath here. Very interesting. If we go back to Exodus chapter 31, verse 13, it says here that God gave the Sabbath so that we would know him. So his appointed times that this attack is against, those that forsake the Holy Covenant, he shows regard for them. But those who hang on to the Holy Covenant, that includes his appointed times, that give us, they're actually a means to an end. The means is to get to know God, and that's the end, is that's what God is looking for. And so this power changes, we saw in Daniel chapter 7, changes God's appointed times, which are his means for his people to get to know him. But those in the time of the end that know their God, I propose that it's through the means that God has given us to know him. Those are his laws in his appointed times. Those, it tells us, will carry out great exploits. And those of the people who understand shall instruct many, yet for many days they shall fall by the sword and flame, by captivity and plundering. We see this same attack on God's people in Revelation chapter 13. We're connecting Revelation chapter 13 to Daniel chapter 8, 7, 8, 10 through 12. It's very obvious that we're talking about the same events. Now, when they fall, they shall be aided with a little help, but many will join them by intrigue. And some of those of understanding shall fall, to refine them, purify them, make them white until the time of the end, because it is still for an appointed time. Persecution has a purpose in God's way of getting it done. Purification happens when there's persecution. That's why he allows this to happen, to purify his people. Revelation chapter 12, verse 17 tells us, and the dragon was enraged with the woman, went to make war with the rest of her offspring, those who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Yeshua the Messiah. You see, the commandments of God are the covenant that God has made with his people. If you obey me, I will preserve you. Ultimately, he will preserve us for his kingdom if we remain faithful. That's why it says in Daniel that he makes war against those that keep his covenant. And he shows favor that those who forsake the covenant. So there's going to be a great apostasy in the time of the end, and God is trying to separate his people from among those that are pretenders of the faith for those. He wants a distinction fully made in the time of the end. Those that obey God, that follow his will, and those that don't. We have to get to that place, and that's where we're going in this in the prophecies. Then the king shall do according to his own will. This is now speaking of the papal power. He will do according to his will. He shall exalt and magnify himself above every god, shall speak blasphemies against the God of gods, shall prosper till the wrath has been accomplished. For what has been determined shall be done. This is the same power that we see in Revelation chapter 13. It says he was given a mouth speaking great things. Who is given a mouth? This is this beast in Revelation 13 that has 7 heads representing the European Union, has the body of a leopard representing the Asian bloc, also has the mouth of a lion, that would be the UK, and it has the feet of a bear. So this is a coming together of these 4 major blocs, these 4 UN security members coming together to create this new world order that will be headed up by this mouth speaking great things, the same little horn of Daniel chapter 7, the same harlot of Revelation chapter 17. All of these prophecies are coming together in the time of the end, and the harlot will rule over them all. This is where we're going as we look in the world stage. I encourage you to look at what is going on in the world. We can connect all the things that are going on in the world. We can see all these things coming together in the time that we're living in. What's the major event? The major event that we're looking at is the war in the Middle East. We can see this thing developing. I would highly recommend is that you prepare for this. You not only prepare spiritually, because who knows? Who knows is going to meet their end during this war. We're going to see terrorism on a world scale like we never have before. There has been an infiltration into all nations. With Islam, they have come to Europe, they have come to the UK, they are in Russia, they are even in China, Southeast Asia, all over, and North America as well. When they make their move on a world stage, it's going to make 9/11 look very small. This is a worldwide scale that we're looking at, and who knows who will live through this. We need to be prepared spiritually. We also need to be prepared mentally for what's coming, and we also need to prepare physically for what's coming. So we need to get ready for this that's coming. We're watching this develop. We're seeing it on a worldwide scale. It's in the news on a daily basis. We can see how all this thing is coming together. So let's leave it at that for today. Let's have a word of prayer, and then we can have some discussion. Father in heaven, we thank you for your word that is sure. Father, we thank you that you are showing us things to come as you have promised. We ask that you continue to lead and guide us so that we can lead and guide those around us. Father, we pray this in the name of Yeshua. Amen.